Hello, I'm Bob Novello. I'm going to be speaking with you about project management and how the basic concepts of this field can be applied to managing smaller as well as larger project efforts. I will be discussing project management methodology as well as tips and techniques for applying these principles. Let me first tell you a little bit about me. I graduated from St. Joseph's University in 1964 with a degree in physics. During a 4-year tour of duty with the Air Force, my career path changed from physics to computer technology. During my 23-year career with Sun Oil Company, I progressed from systems analyst to project manager to systems development manager, where I managed other project managers. I then joined the University of Texas as a professional development trainer, where I helped create the UT Professional Development Center and became its director. I continue to develop and teach workshops in leadership, problem solving, and project management. So, what are we going to learn from this program today? First, I'll discuss the key concepts of project management. Next, I'll show you how to apply those principles to various kinds of projects. Now let's go ahead and get started. Project management can be a very complex subject. Just in the last 20 years, there have been many new management theories, concepts, and software tools introduced into the field. In my 1- and 2-day project management workshops, I discuss risk management, Gantt charts, network diagrams, critical path analysis, crashing a project schedule, earned value analysis, and a variety of other project management methodologies. But you can relax. During this presentation, I'll be focusing on the key concepts that I think will help you do a better job of planning, managing, and reporting your projects. So, what is a project? A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. A project has 4 basic characteristics. It's temporary, meaning that it must have a beginning and an end. It has very specific goals and objectives. You want to avoid using abstract or vague terms that can be misinterpreted. The scope of the project must be well defined and limited, and a project is monitored, tracked, and reported. You'll notice that size is not one of the characteristics of a project, which means a project can be one person or a large team of people. It can last a few days, months, or even years. Conceptually, there are 4 basic layers in a project: the project itself, goals, strategies, and tasks. Goals are the primary results that must be achieved to fulfill the project. Strategies are the specific approaches used to accomplish the goals, and tasks are the specific action steps that must be completed to fulfill the strategies. One of your most significant challenges in developing the project plan is to clearly identify the goals to be achieved and to develop the specific strategies and tasks to accomplish these goals. The project manager must ensure the goals to be achieved are realistic. At a workshop I attended a few years ago, the instructor shared a clever technique for developing effective goals and strategies. They should be SMART, S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, attainable, result-oriented, and time-bound. Now, producing this video is a project, and as I and my project team began planning this video, we realized that our own activities could be used to illustrate some of the core principles that I'd be talking about. So occasionally during this presentation, we will show you brief scenarios depicting key discussions that occurred during the creation of a slightly different version of this program for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. We don't expect any Academy Awards, but I do believe they will help reinforce the concepts I'm presenting. In this first scenario, the team begins the process of identifying the primary requirements of the project and articulates a SMART goal.
Okay, as you may have heard, we have a new project with the coordinating board. Now, I'm responsible for producing a streaming video that applies the basic concepts of project management to the process of managing a Perkins grant. Now, what I need to do today is figure out what we can do for the CB and think about the overall project approach.
Well, I think the first thing we need is a clear understanding of what the coordinating board expects, what they want the grant managers to be able to do, or I guess what they want them to be able to do better. We can't really define that project until we visit with them.
No, I agree with that. Now, I know from their latest email that project planning and quarterly reports are really important to them. Now, I have a meeting scheduled for later this week to talk about the program, and I would like both of you to attend.
Oh, absolutely. That's got to be step one.
For sure. And I think we can start looking for a subject matter expert to help us create the content. I know a little bit about project management, but not that much.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and scout up a content specialist as soon as possible. I would hope, though, we could find somebody local.
Well, that'd make the job a lot easier.
Yeah.
I mean, project management is a really hot topic right now. And I would think that there's bound to be some professors over at UT that could help us.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Will you take on that challenge and see if you could find somebody?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now, of course, there's the whole production side of this. Are we going to have to do this all in-house, or can we farm some of it out?
No, I think we'll have to be in-house. Both time and budget are limited.
Of course.
No surprise there.
When does it due?
Well, we've got just over 2 months.
Ooh, that's going to be tight. How long do you think the final product will be?
Now, somewhere around 30 minutes.
Okay. I know this is important to you, so we'll find a way to fit it in. But we're going to have to keep the project relatively simple. In studio, direct to camera, simplified graphics, and I probably will need 1 or 2 crew members during the production days.
Well, I understand that, and I can cover that.
Okay. So Sabra, you're going to write this? We get the A-team?
It's going to have to be me. Okay. My whole staff is covered up right now. So.
Well, listen, I know you weren't expecting this, and I really want to thank you. I really appreciate your help.
No.
Sure.
Okay, so let me review what we've talked about, see if I can do a little bit better job of outlining our goal. Now, we've got 9 weeks to create a 30-minute video. The target audience will be persons responsible for Perkins grants. The content will show how management tools can be used to improve how colleges plan, execute, and report the progress of their grants. And the production needs to be in-house, using our own staff and facilities, but with some external development support. That cover it?
That's about it.
Sounds like it to me.
Now, of course, this probably could all change a little bit after we meet with the CB, but at least we've got a good idea of what we think we can do given the circumstances.
Good.
I'll shoot you an email this afternoon with details of our meeting next week.
That sounds good.
Great.
There are 6 basic success factors for managing projects. Now, you need to understand that if you don't do these things, they become failure factors. Every project must have one individual project manager. Let me give you an example of why you need one project manager. A few years ago, I was consulting with a client who had all kinds of project problems. Early on in our discussions, the client told me that they were struggling with accountability issues. When problems occurred, everyone blamed someone else. People immediately started doing this. I'm sure that never happened at your organization. But after we talked a while, I discovered that each of the 3 departments within the division was assigning a project manager for every project they did. When I pointed out that the problem could be easily resolved by appointing one overall project manager, they had an aha moment. They wondered why they hadn't recognized such an obvious solution. The issue was that the culture of the organization was so rigid and the system so well entrenched that they couldn't see other options. Next, the project manager must ensure all the key project stakeholders understand the project the same way. Who are the project stakeholders? Stakeholders are those actively involved in the project as well as those who may be affected by the project. Let me share an experience I had early in my systems analyst career that illustrates the importance of knowing your stakeholders. I had numerous conversations with an accounting department manager about critical requirements he needed for a computer application he wanted me to develop. He asked me how long the development would take, and I estimated 5 to 6 weeks. He thought that was reasonable and told me to let him know when it was ready. I incorporated all his requirements into the finished deliverable, along with a few extra bells and whistles that I thought would please him. When I completed the development 5 weeks later, I set up a meeting with the manager to show him the results. I was very excited about this meeting because I was confident that I had exceeded all his expectations. When I arrived in his office, I was directed to a conference room where I found the manager and 10 other people whom I had not met or talked with. They introduced themselves as the accountants who reported to the manager. As I began reviewing the application, it was obvious from their body language there was a problem. When I invited their comments, it became very obvious they were the people in the department who are actually going to use the application, and they had several additional requirements that I had not included. I realized that I had failed to ask the department manager the right questions that would have prompted him to identify the additional people who needed to be included in the development process. The good news was that it only took me 1 week to incorporate their requirements into the application, and they were very happy with the final result. I can assure you that after that experience, I never made the same mistake again. Questions that I ask all clients are, who are the users of the final deliverables? Who else might be affected by this project? And are there any other stakeholders I need to know about? Be sure that you understand the project requirements from the perspective of all those who may be involved. The third success factor is the project manager must control the scope of work. Notice I use the word control, not fix. Fixing the project scope may not always be practical, but keeping it under control is imperative for project success. Project managers find it very difficult to control project scope creep. Scope creep occurs when lots of little changes are added to the project by the client or the subject matter experts who are responsible for doing the project tasks. All of these little changes can add up to dramatically increase the required time frame and significantly inflate a project's budget. Fourth, the project manager must create a project timeline with major milestone measures at key points during the project. This is the project manager's primary tool for guarding against scope creep, and we'll discuss it in much more detail later in the program. Equally as important to creating the timeline is the fifth success factor. The project manager must use the timeline to communicate expectations to the project stakeholders and to track and report project results. Now, you may think this is fairly obvious, but I can assure you that I've seen many instances where the timeline is created because management required it before they would approve the project, but then it was never used when executing and controlling the projects. The project manager needs a detailed schedule to control the project and ensure that important target dates are being met. I don't know about you, but I like to be able to show clear progress points on projects that I manage. It's reassuring to be able to say, okay, tasks E, F, and G are complete, and H is well underway. Without a detailed task schedule, you can't be sure if the overall project is on time. Finally, the project manager must ensure that the venture is a team effort. The project manager has to count on subject matter experts to help plan and execute the project's strategies and tasks. Although the project manager may not perform the tasks needed to accomplish the project, he or she is still responsible for making sure the tasks are done. The project manager is ultimately accountable for the project's success. This means blaming others is not an option. The project manager should monitor project progress, identify possible problems, and then help to solve those problems, or better yet, be proactive to prevent trouble from occurring. The quality of a project depends on the project manager's balancing the three major project constraints: schedule, resources, and requirements. Each of these constraints has a direct influence on the final quality of the project's results. All three constraints are important and must be managed. Rarely do all three have the same impact on the project's outcome. It's important for the project manager to understand the unique relationships between these constraints for each specific project and keep those relationships in focus. It is critical for the project manager to identify the most important constraint for the project. Don't assume. For example, when we reached the turn of the century on January 1st, 2000, all the computer applications which had been previously developed had to be modified to properly handle the two-digit year field, changing from 99 to 00. For these Y2K projects, the schedule was the primary constraint because missing the project's deadline would be a catastrophe. Doing whatever was necessary to meet the project's schedules drove budgets through the roof. There are 4 life cycle stages for every project. I will talk about each of these stages in more detail later in my presentation, but for now, here's a brief description of each stage. The define stage ensures that everyone involved in the project understands exactly what is to be done. The planning stage details the strategies and tasks that need to be accomplished to complete the project. The execute and control stage is where the project plan is implemented and monitored to ensure project success. And the closeout stage of the project is where project results and lessons learned are documented. Some projects progress linearly through the life cycle, however, most do not. A more realistic version of the life cycle looks like this. In this life cycle model, the define and closeout stages continue to bookend the process. However, the plan and execute control stages incorporate more flexibility. Frequently, the project team can complete a plan for a segment of the project and start executing that plan while other segments are still being designed. A good example of this would be a highway construction project. The right-of-way department can develop detailed plans for acquiring the necessary real estate and begin purchasing property, while the design and bridge departments continue to develop construction plans. The first stage of the project life cycle is the define stage. The project manager must confirm everyone associated with the project is on the same page. Everyone must agree with the project goals and strategies. Also remember the M in SMART goals. The M stands for measurable. Use the metrics specific to your project to clarify the scope of what needs to be done. The scope of the project must be clearly articulated. The scope must detail all of the specific elements to be included and frequently provides information about elements that are expressly excluded. It is extremely important for all the key stakeholders to understand what the project will do and what it will not do. Clearly identifying the elements that are excluded from the project scope will help management develop plans for complementary projects that can address those additional goals. While working for the oil company, I was assigned the task of implementing a new voicemail system. I set the scope to include researching alternative systems and vendors, selecting and purchasing the best hardware and software solution, and providing comprehensive testing of the final product. Since I was approaching the project from the technology point of view, I specifically excluded training personnel on how to use voicemail and developing the administrative processes for assigning and managing the voicemail boxes. When I sought approval for my project definition document, I was told that the project must include training personnel and setting up the administrative processes. Had I not followed through with drafting a detailed project definition document and then submitting it for approval, I would have proceeded with my limited scope, and the end result would have been far short of what the management team had expected. A project manager must identify the project stakeholders. As you remember, they fall into two groups. Here are some of the obvious stakeholders who are actively involved in most projects. This is the traditional list from the perspective of most project managers. Me first, then the team, the sponsor, and the customer or user last. Since the list is not in any specific order, I recommend that you reverse that order and place the users at the top of your stakeholder list. Keeping the customer first will lead to more successful projects. I found the best tool to help define a project is a comprehensive checklist which details all the pieces of information needed to effectively define the project. Checklists for a variety of different projects are readily available in project management reference books and on the internet. Of course, you will need to adapt these lists to meet your organization's specific project needs. Also, if the project is producing tangible deliverables, then they must be identified, agreed to, and assigned to the appropriate resources. The defined stage of the project is complete when the project manager produces a project definition document and gets it approved by the key project stakeholders. This is the only sure way to verify that the key project stakeholders see the project the same way. The second stage of the project life cycle is the plan. There are two basic components of the project plan: the work breakdown structure and the project timeline. The work breakdown structure is a brainstorm list of goals, strategies, and tasks needed to complete the project successfully. It is the nucleus of the project. It becomes the source information for creating a timeline. The primary objective of the work breakdown structure is to identify all the strategies and tasks that need to be done without forgetting anything major.
All right, can we move on to the coordinating board project?
Sure.
Oh, you found a content expert at UT?
I did. Bob Novello. He is at the Professional Development Center, and he teaches workshops on project management.
Perfect. Just get his info to Doris, and she can draw up his contract.
Good. She's already on it.
Well, great, great. All right, let's start a breakdown. This schedule is going to be very tight, so we've got no room for surprises.
I pulled the schedule from last year's Department of Health training video. That was a lot like this is going to be. It went 22 minutes long, studio presentation format, pretty straightforward graphics and streaming video distribution.
Great, great, thanks.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I brought in an instructional designer on that project because of the content. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, this is a great place to start. I mean, you just need to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, at the meeting with the CB, we talked about adding some dramatic scenarios just to illustrate some of the key points.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
I mean, obviously, that's going to take some extra time with scripting, the whole approval process, cutting it together. What do you think, Tom?
Well, I think if we keep it to 4 or 5 segments, no more than 2 minutes each, I don't think we add more than a week to the schedule.
Oh, that's better than I expected. Now, what about the initial content development with the CB?
Well, that's got to happen quickly. Bob's going to adjust his schedule so that we can meet with him early next week.
Oh, good. Now, see, the only other thing that I've got is that they wanted to add 100 DVDs to the deliverables.
Oh, that's no problem. We can do that locally. If we give the dubbing house a heads up, they can turn it over in a day.
Good, good. What else? Now, let's think beyond the borders and be sure that there aren't any gaps between what we understand to be our responsibilities and what the CB might expect. What are we missing?
What about printed materials, an online packet?
I talked to them about that. Probably so. It's going to depend on Bob's presentation, but just in case, I've included the print packet in my plans.
Good. What about any other web-based elements? Do they need a site for posting additional material or discussion forum?
No, they didn't mention anything about needing a web presence for the training. That's a good question. I'll follow up on that.
Okay. Well, I think we've got a handle on the strategies we'll need to carry out to meet our goal. We've got a good start identifying the summary tasks. Get your staff to help brainstorm the details and anything we might have forgotten. Send me your breakdowns by Friday morning. I'll merge them with my notes, and we'll get a comprehensive project breakdown to you by the end of the day.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Great.
Thanks.
The most popular format of the work breakdown structure is the outline form. It's the way that most of us begin process of organizing our ideas, so it's not surprising that most of the project management software tools are also organized in the same format. The top level of the outline is the project. The second level will contain the goals needed to accomplish the project. The next level contains the strategies for achieving those goals, and below that we have the details, the specific tasks needed to accomplish the strategies. Let's look at a specific example. Most of us have been involved in a home renovation project at some point in our lives. I've done a work breakdown for a kitchen renovation project where I intend to be the general contractor and will also perform many of the construction tasks myself. My first goal is to define the scope of the project. I will then meet with the contract designer to brainstorm ideas, come up with a comprehensive design, and then produce construction plans and specifications for the project. I set a deadline for this goal of 45 days before beginning the first construction phase. Does this meet the criteria for a SMART goal? Is it specific? Yes, I think it is. Is it measurable? Absolutely. I intend to have a firm design with plans, working drawings, and detailed specifications as the deliverables from the goal. Is it attainable? Result-oriented? I think it is. And is it time-bound? Yes. I have a deadline for completing the goal of 45 days before beginning construction. I have 7 more goals that involve the completion of sequential construction phases. They are a pre-construction phase, an old kitchen demolition phase, then phase 1 of the construction cycle that includes plumbing and electrical rough-ins, a brief city inspection phase, and then 2 more construction phases. Let's now focus on Goal 2 and look at the strategies that I created to meet its objectives. There are 6 strategies outlined here. They include confirming the construction plans and specs are accurate and complete, producing a timeline, producing a detailed list of materials, fixtures, and new appliances, ordering items for arrival as needed, acquiring permits, and securing contractors to perform the tasks that are beyond my skill level for the project, or, if the truth be told, things that I don't want to do. Let's zoom in again and look at strategy F, which is securing contractors. To accomplish this strategy, I've identified 5 specific tasks. They include getting recommendations and qualifying each candidate, preparing bid documents, letting, receiving, and then evaluating the bids, discussing the bids with the top candidates, and selecting a contractor and scheduling them for the project. As you can see, the work breakdown for what might seem like a relatively simple kitchen remodeling project can become rather extensive. Now, if you were to do a breakdown for the same project, your list of goals and strategies would probably be organized a bit differently. But hopefully, the detailed tasks to be performed would be virtually the same. One little side note here, I chose the kitchen renovation example for another reason. There must be hundreds of how-to books written on home construction and remodeling. The better ones will include detailed checklists for the tasks that must be addressed to guarantee a successful outcome. Those checklists benefit from the knowledge gained by construction managers over decades of time. My point is, don't reinvent the wheel. Benefit from the lessons learned by others and the wisdom they gain by managing similar projects and resolving many of the same problems you're likely to encounter. Do a little research. See if anyone in your organization has been responsible for a related project. Or access the web. Find examples of similar projects. Use those resources to inform your project. Okay, as we've discussed, the objective of the work breakdown structure is to identify all the little pieces of the project, all of the detailed activities that must be accomplished in order to produce the best possible outcome. Once the work breakdown structure is completed, 2 more pieces of information must be added for each task: the duration and sequencing. The project manager must get duration information from the team members performing the tasks. Duration must be expressed in calendar time, meaning how many actual days or hours will be needed. If everyone involved on the project doesn't understand that, it can cause real schedule nightmares. For example, if I ask someone, how long is that going to take, and they tell me it will take 40 hours, I must verify they mean that the task can be completed within 1 calendar week. Now, they may have meant that the task will take a total of 40 hours to complete, but those hours will be spent over several weeks due to their other obligations. Clearly, this kind of miscommunication could have disastrous consequences to the project schedule. Be very specific when communicating with team members. Sequencing then puts the strategies and tasks in the order they're planned to be done. The more tasks that can be done simultaneously, the faster the project will be completed. An example of the importance of identifying sequencing can be seen in our kitchen remodeling project. Once the walls are framed, the electrical, telephone, and cable installers can all work simultaneously pulling cable through the walls. But installing the drywall can't begin until all the wiring is complete and the building inspector has signed the permit. I mentioned this earlier, but I believe it deserves repeating. The project manager should rely on those performing the task to provide the time estimates and the sequencing. They have the real-world experience. Take advantage of their knowledge. If the project needs expertise that is not readily available to you, go get it. Don't rush through this phase of the project. Investing a little additional time here can prevent significant headaches later. The second component of the project plan is the project timeline. A timeline will identify the start and end dates for all tasks. The timeline has 2 primary purposes. It's used to communicate expectations with the team and management and to track the project's progress. Inexperienced project managers frequently fail to include contingency time to account for unanticipated small changes. Project management theory recommends adding a minimum of 15% to the overall project timeline. I strongly recommend that you add the contingency time to the end of the timeline. Do not add contingency to each individual task, because if you do, it will definitely be used. This is a graphic example of a simple timeline. The vertical axis displays the list of tasks, and the horizontal axis shows the calendar. The yellow bars illustrate the start and end times for each task. The M1 and M2 represent milestones. Milestones mark significant events in the life of a project and are useful to show major progress points. You can also use spreadsheets to show timelines. They must contain task start dates, end dates, and milestones. Use whatever method works best for you to show how project tasks will be accomplished over the course of the project. A critical step in developing the project timeline is to verify that the resources needed to accomplish the tasks will be available when the draft timeline shows they're needed. When I use the term resources, I am including people, facilities, and equipment. In my experience, this step will undoubtedly change the timeline due to resource conflicts. I need to briefly touch on two additional concepts that are important to any discussion of project management. They are critical path and crashing. A full discussion of these topics is far beyond the scope of this program, but it's important for you to have a basic understanding of the concepts. An examination of the project timeline will show that some groups of tasks are more critical than others because meeting the project deadline is more dependent on these tasks. These important tasks are called the project's critical path. If you want the project completed on time, you must ensure that the tasks on the critical path are completed as planned. Every project has one or more critical paths. Let's use our kitchen renovation project again as an example. The timeline created from the work breakdown structure shows that the total project will take 11 weeks to complete. The timeline also shows the tasks of ordering, receiving, assembling, and then installing the high-end commercial quality gas cooktop that the designer specified will take 11 weeks itself. Therefore, that series of tasks becomes the critical path for the project. The successful completion of the project is dependent on those tasks being completed in order, on time, exactly as scheduled. Identifying the critical path for a project allows a manager to focus additional attention on those tasks to ensure an on-time delivery of the project. It's not unusual for unforeseen circumstances to alter the original project schedule. When this occurs, it may be necessary to compress a segment of the original timeline that affects certain tasks of the project. This is referred to as crashing the project timeline. Now, technically, the term crashing a project refers to modifying the timeline by compressing a segment prior to beginning the execution phase. Compressing the timeline at any point after the planning stage is considered a project change and must be fully documented. Remember back to the triple constraints triangle earlier in my presentation. When the duration of a task or group of tasks is shortened, the result will require changes in the project resources, task specifications, or the budget. Let's go back to our kitchen renovation project to provide an example of crashing a project timeline. Let's say that our project is taking place in the fall and you've scheduled it to be completed by the first week in December so you can use it to entertain over the holidays. Your sister-in-law is hosting Thanksgiving, which normally would make you cringe, but it means that our renovation project can be in progress without the family needing our kitchen to prepare the traditional feast. Just before you begin your construction phase of the project, your sister-in-law calls and says that she will not be able to cook the Thanksgiving meal for some reason and now expects you to host the event for the 30-plus family members. What do? Remember that the critical path for your project was a series of tasks related to the new cooktop. In order to afford the deluxe cooktop, it was necessary to order it from a discounter. The trade-off was that the lead time for the order was 60 days. A brand new cooktop can be delivered by the local kitchen boutique store in 30 days, but it costs $2,200 more plus an additional $100 shipping fee, and there would be a $200 cancellation fee for the discounter. It would be just barely possible to complete the kitchen renovation before Thanksgiving if you place an order for the new cooktop by noon tomorrow. However, you will need to find $2,500 in savings from other areas of the renovation to maintain the budget. After a lengthy discussion with your spouse, a compromise is negotiated. Several decorative items will be eliminated from the renovation, and an additional $1,200 will be added to the budget. The result of this project change will produce a new kitchen a few weeks ahead of the original schedule, a peaceful relationship within the extended family, and a great meal instead of a fast food meal on Thanksgiving Day. This is a significant change to the project. It requires an adjustment to the work breakdown structure that will produce a new project timeline. The new timeline will reflect the removal of a few tasks, the addition of several more, and a new critical path for the project. It will also require providing additional funding resources. When issues occur that affect the timeline, a manager should consult with the subject matter experts and the persons responsible for completing those tasks. They can best determine if adjustments can be made to compress the schedule for those specific tasks and determine the consequences for that action. Also, when a situation occurs that requires compressing the timeline, a manager must re-verify the availability of the affected resources because those changes could have introduced new resource conflicts. Our video production team also had a problem that required them to crash their project timeline.
Okay, I took all of the project tasks and dropped them into a calendar to generate a project timeline for the coordinating board program. You should have received them yesterday.
Yep.
Got them right here?
Okay. Well, let's walk through these tasks one more time. Make sure we've got everything covered, we've budgeted enough time, and everything's in the right order.
Right.
Sabra, you said in your email earlier today that the on-camera presenter has some sort of conflict. What's his name?
Bob Novello.
Bob. What?
Yeah, it looks like he's in Omaha the week that we've got targeted for the studio shoot.
Ooh, that's not good. Is there any chance you can be ready the week before, Thursday or Friday?
No, not really. I mean, we're actually a little bit behind on the script.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just have to push the shoot to early the following week.
Oh, Steve, that's spring break. Campus is closed. We can't get in the building.
Oh, man. I meant to mark that out on the calendar. I forgot to do it.
Well, it's going to be a problem. Job's already tight.
Well, we're going to, let's see. Well, did either of you see any other issues with the time or the sequencing on the timeline?
Well, there is a little issue with the captioning that I missed, but it'll still get done with overall post-phase.
Okay, well, how do we make this work? I mean, we've got a hard deadline. As a matter of fact, I found out yesterday that I have to actually have the dubs back in hand by the deadline in order for purchasing to pay the dub house.
Well, that's
I
new.
know.
Well, we didn't plan on going out of house for this, but would Alpha Studios be an option?
No, they're not outrageously expensive, but we can't afford them for this.
Well, shooting with our gear in the CV conference room really isn't practical.
No. Can we compress the schedule till after spring break and still make the deadline?
Well, if I divide the editing up and I take the cutting for the studio stuff and I job out the dramatic stuff, that should save 4 days.
That helps.
Now, I've got an hourly that can handle it, but Steve, I can't pay her out of my budget.
What are we talking about?
Ooh, $600 range, but since it is the CB, I can give you the editing bay hours.
Well, that's generous. Okay. I'll take care of her hours. All right, thanks. So now we just need to find 3 more days.
Tom, if you can get me a locked audio file as soon as possible, I can get that to captioning when you finish the final edit.
Oh, I can do that. That should save you 2 or 3 days.
That'll help.
Great. I'll revise the estimated timeline and get it out to you by tomorrow morning for your review, and take a hard look at it, though, because we don't have any more wiggle room.
No, we don't.
This is it.
I hope you both have something very relaxing planned for spring break, because when we get back, we're all going to be scrambling.
The next stage of the project is execute and control. As the title implies, these two actions occur at the same time. The project manager's roles in this stage include ensuring that everyone knows what is expected of them, providing whatever help the team members may need, handling any problems that occur as quickly as possible, and coordinating with other areas of the organization that may be involved with the project or impacted by it. A project manager must be knowledgeable in the methodologies of project management, but equally important are the soft people skills. Successful project managers have excellent interpersonal and communication skills. Project management is all about getting things done with the cooperation of other people. To control anything, there are 4 things you must do. Know what you are trying to accomplish, measure what is actually being accomplished, comparing the two, and then making whatever corrections are needed. In project management, which of these 4 steps do you think is the most challenging? By far, the biggest challenge in controlling a project is measuring what is actually happening. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. For the project manager to know what's happening, he or she must capture timely progress information from everyone working on the project. Some organizations have sophisticated data capturing systems while others don't. The project manager's challenge is to create a method for obtaining this critical data. The most common practice for measuring progress is to require each person working on a project to prepare a brief status report at regular intervals throughout the project. There are only 3 things a project manager needs to know to determine the status of a task. Are you meeting the schedule? What have you accomplished? And what issues need attention? Remember, the main purpose of the report is to relate the status of project tasks. Reports do not require a detailed list of all the items each team member worked on. No matter what the size of the project, my rule of thumb is if a status report takes more than 10 minutes to put together, it contains too much detail. Reports can vary from a simple 1-paragraph email to a spreadsheet populated with information from multiple team members. The project manager must clearly communicate his or her expectations for the scope, format, and frequency of reports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. Sometimes, it's just easier to go through these schedule things face to face.
My pleasure. I've been in the editing cave for 3 days and I'm starting to grow mold.
Oh, hey, that reminds me. Those progress reports that you've been forwarding me from Nancy and John, they're very good.
Oh, nice.
I appreciate how they lay out the actual task results that show them against the original plan.
We design our report templates for each project that way. It actually speeds up the reporting task a little. Nobody minds that.
So what's your trick? I mean, I'm always chasing down late reports from my staff.
Yeah, I had the same problem several years ago, but Nancy and I put our heads together, came up with an idea. I created the short report template requesting just the stuff I need to know, and then I created a special project folder on the college intranet, under the department folder. So on Friday mornings, I send an email containing the report form to everybody involved in the project, and they fill it out and drop it in the special project folder by 9 on Monday morning.
Okay.
The email reminds everybody about the report, so I almost always get them all on time. But the best thing is, I don't have to search through my mailbox looking for the staff reports, and I don't have to copy each of the reports and save them on my computer to keep track of them.
That's a pretty good idea. I might just have to steal that from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Buy me lunch.
Deal.
All right.
Once a process for getting status updates has been established, the information must be consolidated and communicated to your client, your management, the project team, and others. The next question is how to do that. The best practice for illustrating the project status is to show actual results compared to the original plan. Typically, a graphical representation of the data makes it easier for people to understand. Remember, our original timeline had 1 yellow bar per task showing what had been planned. As the project progresses, an updated timeline can be created by adding another bar for each task that displays the actual accomplishments. Again, the yellow bar is the original planned task, and the green bar represents the actual task result. So what does this chart tell us? Task A started and stopped as planned. Task B started on time, but ended 1 month late. Tasks C and D were dependent on B, so Task C started a month late and is anticipated to end 1 month later than originally planned. And Task D also started a month late and is anticipated to end 1 month later than originally planned. I sure hope they budgeted contingency time for this project. Any data on the chart past the current date are revised estimates. Graphic charts display data in a clear, easily understood form, which makes them a popular and valuable tool. There are other ways of showing this information. Again, the important thing is to use whatever method works best for you and your organization. But no matter how well you plan a project, there's always a possibility that things will change throughout the life of the project. Once the project is in the execute stage, such changes must be clearly defined and documented. The documentation should also include what is needed to make the requested change. Remember the triple constraint triangle. That is, if a stakeholder adds additional work to the project, that may result in a longer schedule and an increased project budget. This information should also be included in the change documentation, which should be communicated to all key stakeholders. Earlier in my presentation, I discussed the importance of including as much detail as possible when creating project plans. Those details not only allow for more accurate estimating and tracking, but also provide the basis for more accurate status reporting. Now, this is clearly a win-win because the project manager has a valuable tool for project oversight and executive management has a better tool for monitoring project progress. The fourth and final stage of the project is closeout. A project manager should always conduct an end-of-project analysis. He or she meets with the project team to compare project results to the original plan. It's not enough to just document the results. The team should also review both positive and negative events that occurred throughout the project and document lessons learned. If an organization really wants to realize the maximum benefit from project reviews, there must be an opportunity for the team members to comment anonymously. No one likes to be associated with poor decisions or mistakes. Team members will be more likely to disclose such issues if they can do so without fear of repercussions. Savvy organizations embrace project reviews. By capturing and sharing lessons learned, others can benefit from a project team's failures and successes. When lessons learned are well communicated, successes can be repeated and failures avoided. Finally, it is important to celebrate a job well done and recognize the people who made it happen. Before I end this program, let me reemphasize some key points. Appoint one overall project manager. Invest the time to develop a project definition document to ensure all key stakeholders see the project the same way up front. Include the project team when developing the work breakdown structure. Develop a project timeline and use it as a communication, tracking, and reporting tool. Be sure to validate the timeline by verifying availability of resources. Control the scope of the project. Major project changes should be documented, approved, and communicated. Measure progress to effectively manage the project. Regardless of outcome, conduct a post-project analysis documenting project results and lessons learned. And adapt the project management methodology to match your specific project needs. It's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. I hope the project management principles we covered make your next project a huge success.